So, welcome back to part two of our digital citizenship conversations for secondary learners. My name is Chris, and we are going to dive into our next section here, which is about discrimination and harassment online. Now, this takes a form of cyberbullying, and discrimination and harassment and all of these things all fall under this title of cyberbullying. So, cyberbullying takes many different forms, and we're going to go through those and talk about them. So the first one is our online reputation, and we talked about this in our first video, and we talked about the things that that we do, the things that we say, the things that we do to others, the way that we behave online. These all form our online reputation, and that reputation follows us. So as we watched in that video in the first part, this reputation follows us along, and this can cause others to treat us in different ways depending on how we behave. It also can lead others to treat us differently. Maybe we haven't done something badly, but maybe the things that we post are not things that would be typical for a student to be posting. Maybe they have an unusual interest. And the way that others treat them based on that can vary and can also fall into this category of cyberbullying. So the next one here is sexting. So this is where our students would share images of a sexual nature with one another, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Sextortion, again, on the same sort of theme, and again, we'll talk about this one a little bit more in a minute as well. And 3 in 10 youth in Canada say that they've been cyberbullied. Now, this is a pretty standard statistic for around the world, and to put that into context, that would be 3 in 10, meaning every fourth child, and it's actually closer to every third child in your class, would have at some point been a victim of cyberbullying or harassment online. So that's a pretty staggering statistic when we look around and we think about what that means and about the impact that that would have on our learners. So let's go into these and let's think about these in a little bit more detail. So we just talked about online reputation. We talked about this in the first part. We looked at how the things that we do, the things that we say, the way that we behave online can cause others to have different opinions of us. And that includes the things that we post, maybe the content that we consume, the content that we produce. All of these things can cause people to treat us in a different way. So we can have a positive online reputation, we can have a negative online reputation. And the fact that by going ahead and discriminating against somebody online or harassing somebody online, that forms part of our reputation as well. So yes, we can be bullied because of the things that we put online, but also that harassment, that bullying, that also is part of our online reputation. And the way that we treat others, and the fact that often the persona that we have in front of the screen and the persona that we have behind the screen are often two different things. So sexting. So this is where people share images of a sexual nature with one another, and often with our students, this is sending an image maybe to a boyfriend, maybe to a girlfriend, to somebody that they trust. They see this as harmless, but they don't necessarily understand the consequences of this. There's a number of conversations that are really important around this topic. So the first conversation that we really need to make sure that we're having is the fact that what's sent cannot be unsent. So that they understand that whilst they think they're sharing an image with one person, it's not always just one person that then ends up seeing that image. The fact that sending that image, if they are a minor, and if they are sharing that with a minor or maybe somebody who's not a minor, that's still considered to be distribution of child pornography. And this is something that they also have a really hard time wrapping their head around. Well, I'm a minor, and the person I sent it to is a minor, and I'm just sending a picture of myself to my friend. And they have a hard time in understanding the consequence of that and the legal ramifications of potentially being charged with that offense. It's a conversation that is also uncomfortable to have. So we can talk about it in the context of sharing images and the way that those images are shared, and the fact that images that we share, maybe we think we're sending it to one person, but then we can end up with those images being shared elsewhere. So it could be me sharing an image of my children with one of their grandparents, and then they send them to those images to their friends, and then their friends are like, oh, aren't these cute aren't these cute kids, I'm going to send these to my friends. So it can be about retaining ownership of an image as well if you feel really uncomfortable going forward with that conversation. Now, this leads really well into the next topic, which is sextortion. So let's say that a student has sent this image to their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and now that person is saying, well, you know what, if you don't do this thing for me, well, I'm going to share this image with everybody in our class, or I'm going to post this image online, or I'm going to share that video that you sent me with somebody else. That's sextortion because it's blackmail. You're trying to force somebody to do something that they don't want to do, based on the threat of sharing that image. Now, this is fairly common, and it comes back down to, if we don't share the image in the first place, then the sextortion part can't take place. Something that also is really important to mention here that they have a really hard time with is the fact that they often know they shouldn't have shared the image in the first place. So seeking help when somebody then threatens them, they don't want to do that, because now they've got to admit that they shared the image in the first place. So now they're going to try and deal with this situation themselves, and then they don't know how to do that. So having that discussion, them understanding that they can ask for help, like this is the extortion part, the blackmail part, is far worse than the original sharing offense as well. So I'd really encourage you to have both these conversations, and talk about how maybe one action led to another, but still talking to somebody is better than not talking to anybody at all. Cyberbullying takes many different forms. It could be messages, it could be phone calls, it could be silent calls, it could be posts, comments, harassment, spreading false information, and having a conversation with our students about defamation of character, about libel, about spreading that false information, and really getting them to understand that their actions, calling somebody names, saying that somebody did something that they didn't, defaming somebody's character is an offense. And even though they have a freedom of speech, they can't go around spreading false information. So how could you start some conversations here? Well, we could talk about our online reputation being affected by the things that we do online. The sexting part, we could talk about how images being shared online, who can see that image? How can you control who has access to that image once it's sent? What should we do when somebody threatens to share that image online, or whether somebody actually just goes ahead and shares that picture without your permission? And then for cyberbullying, there's plenty of things to be done here, but one important thing is, could trolling be considered to be cyberbullying? And we know the answer to that is yes. And that idea of that online harassment being cyberbullying, but maybe they just see it as having a laugh or having some fun. So I would encourage you to take a moment to think about how can we deal with cyberbullying, and how can you start to have these conversations in your class based off those previous points. So there's a few different platforms that students are using. So the first one is Instagram. It's great for sharing images and video. There's a chat feature in here. They must be over the age of 13 according to terms and conditions. They are pretty good at reporting content and bullying. Teachers can report accounts of under 13s. And if you find content on here that you know shouldn't be here, and it involves one of your students, the police are a really good resource. They have contacts and they can get information taken down really quickly. Another one is TikTok. This one's relatively new. We know that the video trends go quickly viral. Pranks and dances on here. A lot of false information is spread through TikTok. Comments are restricted to a certain length, but there is a chat feature. And then Snapchat. This is often where we see the sharing of these sexual images. It has a feature where they can set that somebody can only view the image once, that you can't screenshot the image. But these features, there's often a way around. You can take a photo of the screen. There are ways to get around those restrictions. So this is where sharing that image in a way that maybe you think nobody else can see leads to a situation where then that could be shared. The extortion part comes in. There's also a location map that allows you to see where others are. So here's a great set of resources. Gone Too Far video from ChildNet is really awesome. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The Media Smarts website has some awesome resources that you can use in the classroom. Connect Safely, again, some great resources. And then the ISTE standards have some digital citizenship tools built into them and some things that you can talk about with your students as well, and some posters and some other awesome stuff. So to wrap this up for this lesson, I would encourage you to go and watch the video Gone Too Far and think about the issues that you could discuss with your class. How was that student made to feel? Or what were the implications? What happened? This video is from the UK. It's very UK centric, but the way that it's put together, the topics that are discussed, it's still a great video. It's fairly old now, but it's still a great video. And you can also have a great discussion about some of the old technology and how far things have come, and are the things that are being discussed there still valid today? And I would argue that they very much are. So go ahead, scan that QR code, watch that video, think about it, and then come back and join us for part 3.